Good morning. I am excited and honored to be kicking off the case study portion of this with our first case study on EchoDrive, which is a transportation logistics system. But first to start, just wanted to do a quick introduction. My name is Carolyn Chandler. I love user experience design. I've been teaching in it and co-authored a couple books in it. Got involved really early, and it's definitely a passion, so it's an honor to be here today. Representing this great team also. So I'm the director of user experience design at 8-Bit Studios in Chicago. I heard one other Chicago person out there. Yeah, okay, great. Yeah, we'll have to say, oh, two. There's two. Sweet. This is a great group of people. We have research, design strategy, development through mobile and web design. So a pretty nice blend of everything with a small group of people. And the name 8-Bit Studios is actually inspired by Pong, Pac-Man, Donkey Kong, those 8-bit games that were very simple and yet fun and really helped launch the video game industry. So that's an inspiration in all of the things that we do. How can we bring that element of playfulness but power to our creations? So a little bit about the challenge that we'll be talking about today. We were approached a little over a year ago by Echo Global Logistics. They wanted us to help make a new load tracking system for their customers and partners in the trucking industry. And the trucking industry is huge. I mean, I didn't really think about it as much before this project, but I would buy something on Amazon and then the next day it would be there. Or a week later it would be there. And there are so many different people. There are over 9 million professionals that are involved in this industry to get these things from point A to point B. $200 billion is the estimated annual revenue in the US trucking industry as a whole. So it's a gigantic enterprise. So here to tell you a little bit more about this challenge is me again, actually, but in video form. Uh-oh. Echo Logistics is one of the top logistics companies in North America. They deal with thousands of loads that go across the country, all sorts of different customers that need it, and working with hundreds of carrier companies that have the trucks that are needed to make it happen. Echo doesn't employ drivers directly. They work with the carriers who employ the drivers. And a lot of the times, those drivers are not really going to be in one predictable space at any one moment in time. So we actually went out in the field and tried to find places where we could encounter drivers naturally during times that they would be working with their loads. December 16th, 2017 is a really big date for a lot of carriers and their drivers. The government is mandating that these companies move to e-logging systems rather than using paper. So a lot of companies who employ a small number of drivers and may have 20 trucks or less are really having to move into something that they haven't had to deal with before. So we brought those insights back to work with the Echo stakeholders, and we did a lot of deep dives with stakeholders. We were doing meetings with 15 to 20 different people where we were going through the results, and we created a big visual customer journey that explained the way that drivers, carriers, and Echo Logistics professionals were working together to make sure from beginning to end that the load is communicated clearly, is progressing the way it should, and reaches its final destination. So what we ended up with is a mobile app for drivers. It provides just-in-time milestone reporting that's aware of things like appointment times for pickup and delivery. We integrate load details, which surprisingly ended up being one of the biggest areas of value for drivers, because right now they have load numbers that are like 10, 12-digit numbers. So they can't take this device out. They have to rewrite each of these numbers down and physically bring that clipboard in with them to check in at different stops. For the carriers, we focused on giving them a portal that would let them see each of their loads and highlight the ones that were running behind or might have issues reported on them. So now we have the app out being beta tested by drivers in the field along with their carriers. We're gathering feedback as we go, and we are enhancing for the next versions that are going to be going out for a broader distribution. The Echo team, stakeholders, and Echo product leads worked really closely with 8-Bit's team. We had visual designers and user experience professionals working with them to go out and to understand those needs. We had visual designers working on creating the prototype that we took out to get feedback, and then we developed the app and the front-end templates for the web portal. After this, we all have a better appreciation for what it takes to get a load from one place to the other. Meet me. I don't know. That's me saying I don't think you should leave that in there. So I don't know if you heard this part, but one of the big dates that I mentioned in that video is December 16th, 2017. So just about a month away. This is a huge date for people in the trucking industry because the government has mandated that all trucks have e-logging systems within the truck. And a lot of these smaller companies that have maybe 3 trucks, 20 trucks, which makes up a lot of that trucking industry, actually are working with paper quite a bit. So they do have these devices they're starting to place in, but they don't really have a good comprehensive system for working and moving away from paper. So that was the challenge that we knew we were going to need to address. We gathered our team at 8-Bit, which include very immersed project management, the UX lead, product designer, and we definitely depended on our mobile development and front-end web development team to tell us what's going to be feasible, because we had so many systems that we had to bring together, and they all had to be really just in time in communicating and tracking status. We also worked pretty much joined at the hip with the client, with Echo. They joined us on the research trips. We were whiteboarding together throughout. We were meeting with their stakeholders, so very immersed process with them. Of course, many Post-its were killed in the process, as I know a lot of people here probably have done. We also then brought that into Mural, so shout out to Aaron at Mural. That was very helpful for us to digitally be able to add to those ideas as we went along. And one thing I wanted to point out about this in the middle here is that we wrote assumptions for drivers. A lot of people, I think, give assumptions a bad name. I'm really happy to make an ass of you and me. Let's make an ass of you and me at the beginning, get it out there, use it as a bridge to figure out what we need to learn, and then figure out whether we were right or not. So some of the assumptions that we knew we had, one of the conscious assumptions, was that drivers were going to resist tracking. Because a lot of drivers, especially the over-the-road drivers that are out on the road for 5 days at a time, they're drawn to it because it's a freedom, it's kind of an independence, and now they're being tracked, so some of that independence really seems to be lost. We thought we were going to see a lot more resistance because of that, but when we went out there, it seemed like a lot of drivers, they knew about that date, they knew it was coming, they knew things were changing. There had been some people that retired out because they really didn't want to be tracked, but for the most part, it was already accepted. This is something that's going to be coming, and we need to be prepared. We did also hear people say, and my driver's kind of screwed right now because they don't have the systems in place that they need to make this really happen. They were very welcoming. They showed us the devices they were working with. And as I mentioned in the video, those devices can't be taken out of the truck. So they're looking at pretty complex information in a really low fidelity kind of screen and having to rewrite 10 to 12 numbers. And each load has maybe 6 to 8 different numbers they have to get right, or else they're waiting forever. So it's a huge area of frustration for them. We made the assumption also that small companies are going to be even more paper-based than big companies, and that was definitely true. Not only that clipboard that we saw people walking around with all the time and the drivers carrying throughout, but we also went to go visit some of the carriers. So these are the people who are employing the drivers, who are managing them in these central offices. And what you can see here in the lower left is they've actually printed out all of the loads for the week and put them in folders for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. There's a change, they either strike it out and write on it, or they reprint that out. It's very paper-based that they're working with. So we needed to take some of those in to understand how we were going to design a more digital system for them. This was an assumption we didn't realize we were making until we went out there, which is all smartphone users love app stores. People were like, oh, this is a great app for you. You know, this is going to make your life easier. Great, I'm going to go to the app store, I'm going to download it, I'm going to try it out, I'm going to install it and play with it. That's not really the case. There were a few people we talked to who owned their own trucks, so they were kind of their own owner-operator. They might look for productivity tools, but a lot of the drivers we talked to, actually, they went to download Google Maps, and other than that, they're texting, they're using the phone, they're using the camera, they're checking their email. Maybe they're browsing the web because they're waiting so long, but they weren't the kinds of app fans that we all are. So we had to know that that onboarding process is going to be a pain for them, and we need to try to make it as easy as possible. We also created the user journey that you saw briefly in the video. This was a great socialization tool because we could put it up on the wall, and then we had people from other areas of Echo that were affected by this but not on the team that could see it, could correct us if we had some terminology wrong for their area. This actually shows the driver and the carrier and Echo roles that all have to come together to communicate status along the way. And we used it to get out pains, goals, and brainstorm new opportunities, which we then used as we were designing the mobile app for drivers. So here you can see they have their load information. They can swipe through, they can then drill in. We worked on some pretty complex business logic in the middle to make sure that the next thing they needed to do was the most prominent thing and that it was smart enough so that if somebody else reported for them, it could clearly move on. They only have to worry about one thing at a time. Because again, they're driving. We don't want to make this too intrusive for them, so we had to keep that in mind. And we wanted to make sure they had that great access to all of the details they needed to in the load. For the carriers, then, they were working more in their office, so we created more of a mobile web portal for them, a web portal for them. They had to see that same information, but at a broader level, and they had to have access to more details along the way. We also noticed when we went to go visit them in the office that they had a pretty complex system themselves for how they were using color, tracking status, with symbol. And so we really paid attention to that when creating the board for them that would also bring up those loads that needed attention. So we wanted to try to stay simple and use a variety of methods, but not overcomplicate things. It's really important to know when a load's been canceled, if you need to assign a new driver, if somebody's late to an appointment, but you don't want everything flashing all at the same time because actually a lot of their software is doing that already for them. So it's been live now for about 2 months. We're inviting new carriers every day. We've got about 3,000 loads tracked and big plans to extend that out to even more people. So that's about EchoDrive. So I think it's Q&A time. We don't have a lot of time, but maybe time for one question. If anybody wants to be the icebreaker of the conference, no pressure? No pressure. Oh, okay, great, yes.
You mentioned other software that you use. What are there other software or apps that you use serving similar services?
Yeah, actually, so Echo is a broker, and there are other brokers out there. So each broker has their own kinds of systems, which can be painful too. So we were really trying to do something that would be easy for people to get into and that was actually pushing where it needed to push. But I think there are a lot of people out there trying to solve this problem because it's looming. So yeah, there are a few different systems, but I don't feel like there's one sweet spot yet. Well, I guess last thought I'll leave you with is if you ever get a chance to tour a truck, I highly recommend it. If you talk about designing with constraints, there are folks living in this really small area, and we ran into like people with 2 dogs and their PlayStation, and all. I mean, it's pretty creative what you can do in a back area there, and it's a lifestyle that's happening all around us all the time that we don't really know a lot about. So, great. Thank you.